Howdy, everyone. Pixar films kick ass. Okay, maybe like just half of them kick ass. A decent amount of them are mid, including that Red Panda movie. The 9/11 memes were funny though, but when they make a hit, it's a massive hit. Though there is an underlooked part of Pixar's history, which is their tie-in games. I haven't played many of them. I barely remember the Toy Story interactive storybook for the PC. I've also played The Incredibles for the Game Boy Advance. I remember it being a decent beat-em-up. Well, I decided to cover a couple of these games. I bought 3 of them on Steam, 1 on Xbox, and downloaded 1 on Game Pass. So the first one I'll start with is Finding Nemo. It's a classic. Actually, it's the first film I've ever seen in theaters. At the start, I had to pick a save file. I went with the turtle because, well, most of the other side characters in Finding Nemo are not so memorable. Who really gives a f*** about this pink thing? So the game finally begins, and I didn't know the PC version was completely different from console. The commercial of the console version made it look like a typical platformer, though this is a point-and-click game akin to humongous entertainment titles. You know, Freddy Fish, Put Put, Pajama Sam. Or wait, no, it's Pajama Sam. Because I remember that dude from the Amanda Show was named Tony Pajamas. Where was I? Oh yeah, Finding Nemo. Presentation-wise, Finding Nemo comes off as a typical low-budget movie tie-in. I switched between Marlin and Dory out in the ocean and Nemo in the fish tank. As Nemo, I had to gather charms from the other fish because we don't want this game to be too short, do we? So we gotta stretch out this runtime. We gotta stretch it. It's gotta be stretchier than Elastigirl, but I'll get to her later on. Minigames are also thrown in to keep things from getting too repetitive. Back as Marlin, I run into the sharks. I did a minigame with the flashlight fish thing, and then did another mini game with the jellyfish. They were all pretty generic and forgettable, to be honest. I switch back to Nemo and get the rest of the charms, and then he goes off to become shark bait. Ooh. After another mini game, I have to go around the tank to gather pearls to fill up the runtime of this game even more. But after that, I finally dirty up the tank. Switch back to Marlin, did another simple mini game with the turtles, and then I got crabs. Eventually, Nemo escapes the tank, and we reach the climax. Another overly simple minigame. Overall, anyone who grew up with this game would probably feel nostalgic, but honestly, Finding Nemo on the PC was pretty underwhelming. Up next is Toy Story 3. Not my favorite of the 4, but it was still a pretty solid film. It's developed by Avalanche Studio, known for making tie-in games by Nickelodeon and Disney, such as Rugrats in Paris, the Attack games, Chicken Little, Meet the Robinsons, 25 to Life, and Hannah Montana Spotlight World Tour. And now they're working on Hogwarts Legacy. Please don't be trash. This time I decided to get the Xbox version. It opens with a recreation of the movie's beginning. This is a tutorial on basic platforming and combat. It's all very Lego-esque. The next level up is Andy's House, which is a segment of the game that focuses on switching between all of the playable characters. Woody, Buzz, and Jessie all have different abilities. For example, Buzz can yeet Woody and Jessie across the room. You can switch between the 3 similar to the Lego games. I moved to the basement and I'm rewarded with more platforming and this task where I have to find a bunch of toy soldiers. After that, Rex finds the Buzz Lightyear game from Toy Story 2, complete with that third-party Super Nintendo controller. Next, I actually got to play a level of it, but after a bit, I spontaneously decided to switch to another aspect of this game, Toy Box mode. Many would say this is a precursor to Disney Infinity, also developed by Avalanche Studio. Toy Box mode is where you can customize your own town, and its citizens consist of Ham, the Prospector, and chickens. I love chickens, especially when they're grilled or fried. So I start off by doing basic fetch quests, but then I get around to the creative part pretty quickly. I spent another 15 or so minutes doing more missions and collecting stuff I could customize my town with, including outfits from other Pixar films, such as Sully and Dory, with an eye. Good job. Toy Box mode along with the base game are both surprisingly decent. Honestly, if I had the time to kill and my dummy thick backlog didn't exist, I'd actually go back and play the rest of this game. Brave. I thought it was okay. Yes, the marketing was a bit misleading. I thought it was gonna be this epic Avatar The Last Airbender-esque adventure, and instead we got a Brother Bear remake. But looking back, the animation was beautiful, the score is top tier, and the third act is genuinely great. Once it starts, we immediately get to Merida's mother turning into a bear and having to chase her around. Damn, the character models are hideous, especially for a 2012 game. So how's the gameplay? It's a twin-stick shooter and a hack and slash rolled into one. So a big difference is that Mordu, that big cursed bear, has caused all these creatures to come out. So on top of having to turn her mother back, Merida has to bop all these monsters. Occasionally, I switch to playing as her brothers to do a very simple, less than 2-minute long puzzle. At another point, I had to play as Merida's mother. I'm not gonna lie, this is where the game begins to hit a slog. Controlling this bear is a pain. Fortunately, these battles aren't too long. But back to Merida. The ability to switch the elements of your arrows make things a little bit interesting, but the overly basic gameplay does get repetitive. Repetitive to the point where I wanted to move on to the next game. Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga was decent, so why not try out Lego The Incredibles? I boot up the game, iconic music plays, and I am hyped, and then immediately disappointed to see it open with the second film. Not terrible, but the first is more iconic. Combat is pretty basic. Each family member has different abilities, but they're mostly utilized in the puzzles. After I get to this big house, I unlock these mystery bags. My first thought was on whether or not these were really paid loot boxes. They give off that vibe. Turns out they're not. The only paid content in this game are skins. Yeah, they're just as stupid. We get a brief appearance from the greatest Pixar character of all time, Edna Mode, and then we unlock the open world city. I roam around and take down these ice cream themed villains. It's pretty silly and comes off as simple fluff, but you know, it's a kid's game. After that, I continue the story and finish things off with this motorcycle chase. And it's pretty fun and a nice change of pace, just like the vehicle sections in the Skywalker Saga. But now, onto the fifth and final game. Rush, a Disney Pixar adventure, originally released on the Xbox 360 in 2012, intended to utilize the Kinect. That sounds like a nightmare, but in 2017 it re-released on the Xbox One without the need for a HAL 9000 knockoff. Once I customize my character, I get into it. Rush is set in a Pixar park with each area focusing on a specific film. The first big problem is how cheesy the dialogue gets even for a kid's game.
I'm Shelby, and I'm crazy about cars. I love playing Mater. He cracks me up.
First, I entered the world of Cars. Each world has a set of levels that can be completed in roughly 10 minutes each. The first one here was a pretty decent drive. Up is the next area I visit, and it's basically just linear platforming with some puzzles thrown in. The Toy Story level is also pretty similar, and so is The Incredibles, and Raccoon Tooie. With this being a port of a Kinect game, it feels on rails a lot of the time. Oh, and for this specific re-release, they added Finding Dory, this time with a Y, probably to tie in with the movie. But guess what? It's another simple and linear level. They all do blend together, but for kids who have never held a controller in their life, Rush, a Disney Pixar adventure, seems like an okay title. Presentation-wise, it's actually not that bad. While the graphics are decent, the game is full of fast-paced, albeit repetitive levels. The developers, Asobo Studio, went on to release some amazing titles later on, such as Microsoft Flight Simulator, A Plague Tale Innocence, and the upcoming A Plague Tale Requiem. Oh, and they also made the masterpiece that is Monopoly Plus. Your rent is due, So these are some of the Pixar tie-ins. Overall, it was a nice nostalgia trip. For the most part, the games were not that bad, but not very memorable either. Actually, there was one thing that was very, very memorable. The end credits of the Finding Nemo game. Yeah, this is cinema.